everybody doing? This is your brother and friend Yeshaya Israel. As wanted to come and talk upon this matter. We call it black men and women. Everything that's going to be said is not going to be agreed with. Everything is not going to be applauded. But I am open to constructive criticism. I can be reached at the number 908-587-4841. One of the first things that I want to talk about in this is growth. We speak as black people about being the greatest inventors. True. We speak as black people about having the greatest empires and kingdoms in the earth in history. Check. Correct. We speak as black people as being the great writers, the inventors, the strongest. Check, check, and check. Now, just look at it from an empire matter. You have, for instance, the Empire of Ghana, Mali, Songhai, and others. At different times, in order for that to be, one had to have a creative mind. One had to have been able to see his or her own light. How does that tie into matters of growth? You want to surround yourself with people who want better for you. You want to surround yourself with people like the old song from the Cheers show go back in the 80s, where everybody knows your name. Name can be your popularity, your fame, and what you're about. And so, looking at it like that, if we will, how can we speak upon being a great people while being guilty of two things? Smothering another's growth and not seeing one's own personal potential. It's impossible, say, for such in that manner. I have learned so much in the past 3 to 4 months being more and more around my little one. She studies animals. She teaches me and shows me things about that. And about not trying to be disrespectful of self. I wasn't the best father, as I pointed out on the platform before. So now that she's practically grown, regardless of what anybody might think, she's 18, going to be 19 next month, which means next year she'll be 20. That's a grown-up. And one of the things to point out is it will be wrong of me to try to smother her growth, stagnate her growth. And whatever she pursues and wants to get into, that's not bad. I come to understand after hearing, but now seeing and experiencing then, it is my duty as the parent to guide the child, not always make every decision for the child. Your child is going to have different taste buds than you, and I promise you, not to be too personal, the kind of sandwiches my little princess like, no, I don't. But that is her uniqueness. You understand? Just as we don't control our relatives' taste buds, we cannot be the full controller of where one's path is going. We did a video before called Being Like Water and Fire, knowing when to sit there in matters of making things hot or making things cool. In that particular case and so on. So I want to say hello and peace, shalom to the people that I see. Carlo and C, Arlie, and Celia Benya. Thank you for joining on. Now, what else can we say and think upon this kind of matter? In many cases, black men, and I'm speaking in general, have abandoned the family in certain cases. And in certain cases, the black women have wrecked the family. So now when you see a generation that has, when men say that women got daddy issues and women saying men got mommy issues, in certain cases that is true. Now in the Bible, when you go in Ezekiel chapter 20, it says, hearken not to the ways of your fathers. That doesn't mean you dishonor your parents. What it's saying is that you don't go and do things exactly the same way as he or she did. That's what that means in that particular case. Again, that is in Ezekiel 20 when it says, hearken not to the ways of your fathers. So, tying all of that up, if the kingdoms that we spoke about earlier was just like the kingdom before it, then it would not grow in its own light and right. So when you're around people who try to stagnate your growth, there are certain clues that they try to do with that, even if it's not quote unquote intentional, which I really believe and know it is. But things such as saying, be humble when you're not being arrogant. You understand? Productivity makes the naysayer be quiet. Moving on without disrespecting. Getting things accomplished without stepping on toes is how one can grow in that particular case. You have to know the kind of energy and the people that you have around you. Like I stated, my little princess is 18. I remember people telling me, while I never asked them to help me in regards with this, that people were telling me that when she was a baby, me giving her mother X amount of money was too much. Are you serious? And I'm not making this up. Like, oh, the amount that you're giving is too much. She don't need that much. But you ain't never buy a pair of socks for my princess. You ain't never sat there and want your child to play with mine. Just throwing that out there. Yet, there are people who will try to sit there and manipulate and control for purposes that's not good. You understand? So, a lot of reasoning has come in my life. Learning more about myself and dealing, say, with my little one. Learning more about her as she deals with me. And wanting to grow and go. What do I mean by that as I expound on grow and go? Your children are going to want to have their own way. And that is very, very important. You ever follow my channel? You ever notice I always talk about my mother? May she rest in peace. The one who bought me history books. The one who encouraged me when she herself was not heavy into history herself. The one who came to the school plays. The one who did her best to sit there and make sure she guided me in a certain way. That is why over 20 years later, after her death, may she rest in peace, one still speaks upon it because of the memory that is left. And the light and the respect that was shown. What legacy are we leaving to our children? 1991, the Hebrew calendar had a saying that said, we are 9 years away from the next century. What are we leaving our children? I was 11 when that came out. I'm now 45. And we can still ask, after the year 2000 done came in, 20 plus years later, what are we going to leave our children? Very, very important in that particular case. There was a song in the 1980s that was saying basically, not without my child. And the theme of the song is the guy in her life, the man in her life, wanted her essentially to choose between him and her children. That means that kind of man is in competition with her children. Can't dwell and build with that. You understand? Now, in some cases, when the men say, I'm going to sit there and put my child first, sometimes some people may have a problem with that, but that's going to have to just be your problem. Because I'd rather not have to answer to you and ignore you than having to sit there and answer to my child. Because one thing I learned in this quote unquote year of 2025, to put it in time frame, because I got my own spot now in Jersey. My little one stays with me. What I learned is children will tell you about you. And when they do, don't sit there and say, stay in a child's place. Because then you got to ask, how are they going to learn to express themselves? A lot of times when you deal with pimpology, a man that's a pimp, he gets with females who didn't have that fatherly guidance and hug, spiritually or otherwise. So he, quote, becomes say that for her. So what do I care to say in closing out this kind of matter? We started talking about kingdoms in Africa and how they grew independently. And then we started talking about seeing one's light and growing therein. Anytime you got to sit there and choose between, and certainly your children, and time spent in anything else, you got whole single parents that sit there and have their whole work schedule working around the time and scheduling with their children. So we have to change the narrative, black people. We have to change the narrative of the female homewreckers and the abandoning males. We have to repair that breach. We have to sit there and come full circle. We have to sit there and make amends one with another. These are things that I've come to been talking about before, but now actually seeing how that must be put into one's life. And that which flakes away from you, departs from you, as you begin to sit there and see your own light and walk therein, that means that was dark energy that can't stand the light. They can't stand a woman or a man saying, I'm going to prioritize family. They can't stand a student saying, I'm going to study harder and smarter for the midterms and then the finals. They can't stand to sit there and see a person at a job who doesn't mind becoming, quote unquote, employee of the month. They can't stand to sit there and see somebody respectfully and righteously wanting to become an entrepreneur. How dare you? Become a regular employee like the rest of us. What's wrong with you? That kind of mindset. I remember, and I want to get not too personal, and I mean no disrespect. I remember when I was going to take a test regarding the fire department, right? The people in the building did not encourage black people, I'm talking about. And when the time came for me to take it, people, I bull crap you not, literally turned their back. Like, I don't want to sit there and see him going to sit there and take that test. Now, mind you, that particular day, I didn't pass the test, but I did eventually pass the same test after I failed it that time. But I say that to say this, brothers and sisters, when you see your light and you walk in it, and others can't see it or appreciate you for that, as you try to improve yourself, just let them dead cells go. You have people, black men, black women, who see you in a certain way and expect you to stay in that way. They don't expect you to grow. You have to see yourself growing. You have to sit there and be your own biggest supporter. And in the spirit of humility, ask, if you care to, what impression am I making? Don't hesitate, perhaps, not that I'm a doctor in the field, to ask people in layman terms, what impression do I make? What do you think of me? Because a lot of times what happens is you'll be able to crack the impression that you're making, and you can make even a better impression. We Israel, you should not hate your brother in your heart. Did I offend you, my brother or sister? Because see, while people scream, be humble, you can't be humble while being hesitant to sit there and take constructive criticism. You can't be humble and refuse to see your own light. You blind yourself and be blind, like it says in Isaiah chapter 29. Stupefy yourselves and be stupid. Blind yourselves and be blind. Ye that are drunken but not with wine, that stagger but not with strong drink. That's in Isaiah chapter 29. So why would we want to blind our own selves? Why would we not want to see our own potential and our own light? Why would we want to be stagnant to make others comfortable? If we come from people, as we pointed out in the beginning of this, the greatest inventors, the people who survived through all kinds of matters and having kingdoms way across the ocean, there is, with that being true, using that as a catalyst, using that as a standard, no reason why we cannot still do those kind of things. If we are the strongest people, and if we are the biggest people once it comes down to persevering, once it comes down to being not weak, having strength, being strong, as we were told in the scriptures, be strong and of good courage. Why then are we always saying be humble? When many people who don't see his or her own light keep on with the narrative of, quote, be humble, what he or she actually sadly is saying, don't outshine me. How dare you? And so that is something for reference purposes. Do not sit there and hesitate to be great. Go and be great. Like my brother Rob, who runs the community in Goshen, says. Ezekiel chapter 34 speaks about the people who don't take out the time to strengthen the weak, who do not take out the time to seek that which is lost. So if we are supposed to be found and finding, and we're supposed to be strong and strengthen others, and we're supposed to be our biggest supporters spiritually and in other aspects, that means we have to sit there and hear each other. We can't deal with the Malaki say with each other. You understand? My little princess is heavy into animals. I'm not. She's, not to get too personal, she's getting a dog soon. Because where we are in Jersey, the landlord is okay with us having a dog. It is incumbent upon those who have that respect to encourage that. In the movie Malcolm X, when the young man was playing the child version of Malcolm X, saying, I want to be a lawyer. No, that's not a good profession for a quote N-word. And you still got some of our people who think that mindset. But we see how great Malcolm became, may he rest in peace. He became, in so many words, a lawyer for the people. Now, he was told, you should be a carpenter. And there's nothing wrong with being that, because we need that too. Because when we start talking about building things and having an empire and a kingdom and so on, somebody has to build something. So we need all of that. But if your spirit, may Malcolm X rest in peace, is saying, I want to be a lawyer, don't settle for becoming a carpenter. I've taught in a school for 5 semesters. I remember being online prior to that. For going into a trade school. And when they told me the amount of tools that I would need, the blowtorch and this and that, I'm like, that's not where my spirit is. So eventually a brother went and got degree and did teaching in a school. Has to get another degree in order to get the better schedule with the school, but that's in time. So I'm saying that to say this. If your spirit is leading you into a certain way that's not bad or negative, then do that. Be like fire and water. The people who don't understand why you do a sabbatical for X, Y, and Z reason, dealing with family, dealing with job, dealing with anything, dealing with spiritual health, whatever it may be, that's his or her own problem. Bible says, if you wise for yourself. So, amazingly, black people, I've seen it to where we would expect maybe for us as black people to not even be there for one another. And let me expound upon this while I got the time to do so, right? What do I mean by that and say in that particular case? How is it there are people who could encourage, one not communicating with the other parent, even if they're not a couple. I remember I've experienced that. You talk to your child's mother about what? What are y'all doing? We have a child. See, when you're dealing as a man or a woman, and you go into a relationship where they quote ready-made family, you got to know what you're getting into. You understand? Because you don't want to, and I mean not to get too personal, you don't want to be, say, in a situation like myself was, where you got to sit there and then explain yourself to your child. Well, I wasn't around because of this at this time, and I wasn't around because of this and that time. So now it's time to rectify the situation. As many people would say, it's not too late. So that's just something that was on my spirit. Hoping everyone is okay and well. Again, I can be reached at 908-587-4841. Don't profess to know everything, and hope everybody is well. Thank you, family. Gonna rest up. Peace.